Have you ever felt like you were being watched while walking alone on the street, only to turn around and see nothing? Well, I wish I had found nothing the time I looked. Greetings, everyone. I've been a loyal follower of this channel for some time now, and I want to share a small story I personally experienced. In my city, public transport isn't very reliable, at least in the area I frequent, so I decided to use my bike to get around everywhere. That's how a day that seemed perfectly normal turned into something terrifying. It all started when night fell. After finishing my activities, around 10:30 p.m., I got ready to head home. I remember that as I left the sports center, one of my friends commented that the moon was particularly full that night. Another friend ahead of us joked, saying, "It's witch and werewolf day. Be careful." We all laughed and continued walking toward the exit. Once we were outside, I grabbed my bike and my belongings, said goodbye to the group, and took off. The first few kilometers were uneventful. There were almost no cars, but there were no people either. I found that strange because, even at that hour, I was never the only one heading home on that street. I decided not to dwell on it and tried to enjoy the quiet night. After a while, I reached a street I almost always use as a shortcut. If I didn't, my trip would take about 30 minutes longer, and that late, it wasn't an option. My mother always waits for me to get home before going to bed. This street, in particular, feels like something out of a horror movie: very tall trees, faint streetlights, and a road surface that alternates between asphalt, cobblestone, and dirt. About halfway down, there's an old convent still inhabited by the congregation of the Sisters of St. Anne. I apologize if I'm getting any details wrong here, but that's what I believe it is. Remember the full moon? A few meters before entering the street, a strong wind began to blow, and a cluster of clouds covered the moon. When I turned onto the street, the moonlight vanished, plunging me into near darkness. I always carry a flashlight, but for some reason, it refused to turn on. It felt as though something was preventing any light from shining. Since it was late, I decided to proceed slowly through the street. That turned out to be my biggest mistake. As I pedaled, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if something bad was about to happen. I kept going until I reached the wall of the convent, which has a large wooden gate that's always closed. Although I'd seen it many times before, something about it gave me chills. As I passed the gate, I felt a gaze on me. I turned abruptly. The gate, which had been closed, was now slightly ajar, but I hadn't heard any sound of it moving. That made me twist the handlebars and almost fall off my bike. I managed to regain my balance and stopped to take a deep breath before continuing. I crossed to the other side of the street to feel a bit safer, but once again, I felt like I was being watched. This time, it was stronger, as if several people were observing and analyzing my every move. I told myself, "You're almost there." But when I glanced toward the sidewalk near the convent, I saw a shadow, a pitch-black silhouette the size of a person, with no distinct features. I decided to speed up, but when I looked again, I realized it wasn't just one shadow, there were several. I let out a scream of terror. They seemed to be moving toward me. I pedaled as fast as I could, but the path felt endless. When I finally saw the light at the end of the street, relief washed over me. Once I reached it, I looked back, but nothing was following me. I arrived home pale. My mother, concerned, asked what had happened. I told her everything. Being a religious woman, she performed a spiritual cleansing with prayers, a candle, and eggs. We placed the eggs under my bed. The next morning, when we checked them, the egg whites were dark, and the yolks appeared cooked, as if they'd been boiled. We called a family friend, who said it might have been obsessive spirits. Since then, I always pray before going through that street. Do you think there's truly nothing in the darkness?